Hello, ladies, gentlemen, and everyone listening in to tonight's broadcast of VORW Radio International, the voice of the report of the week, going out to this Saturday, the 6th of May, 2023. This broadcast is transmitted to you on the international shortwave frequency of 4840 kilohertz WWCR. Thank you so much for tuning in. In tonight's broadcast, a roundup of select current events. Following the news, listener-requested music shall follow. So we'll start the broadcast off with a little bit of talk, and then get into some music. Please stay tuned. The news is next. The administration of U.S. President Joe Biden claims it did not receive any heads-up about the drone raid on the Kremlin, which Russia says was conducted by Ukraine and sought to assassinate President Vladimir Putin, Politico reported on Wednesday, citing 4 U.S. officials. According to 2 U.S. officials interviewed by the outlet, the administration is still not sure who orchestrated the attack. One official told Politico that if Ukraine was indeed behind the raid, we had no advance knowledge. On Wednesday, the Kremlin said that Ukraine attempted to strike Putin's residence overnight with 2 drones, describing the raid as a terrorist act and an attempt against the Russian president. It noted that the attack had not caused any casualties or damage, and both drones were downed with electronic warfare measures. The Kremlin also said that Russia deserves the right to retaliate anywhere and any time it deems necessary. Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky has denied responsibility for the attack, claiming that Kiev is focused on fighting for the territories it claims as its own. Commenting on the raid, White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre stated that Washington, quote, is not encouraging or enabling Ukraine to strike beyond its borders, end quote. Later, speaking to the Washington Post, U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken cast doubt on the Kremlin's version of events, arguing that anything they say should be taken with, quote, a large shaker of salt, end quote. So again, there's no confirmation as to who perpetrated what. All that we know for sure is that a few days ago, a few explosions were reported at the Kremlin, that's the Russian capital, and they were indeed captured on video, but it is unknown who perpetrated them or for what purpose. Russia, of course, is going all in on this, and they're saying, see, this is proof that Ukraine is going in and they're trying to attack our capital and they're trying to kill our leader, etc. Ukraine is saying, well, maybe Russia did that to themselves because they're so incompetent, or maybe they did this as a sort of false flag to try to use this as a means to justify an escalation. And then you have various theories cast here and there that say, well, maybe it was a rogue unit from Ukraine that did it. Maybe Russia was trying to launch something and it went haywire. Maybe it was a rogue unit inside Russia. Maybe Ukraine is getting a bit too cocky, etc. So there are all sorts of various theories about this, and that's where things stand. No one really knows the answer at this point. Giving an update on the situation in Sudan. Fighting in Sudan has intensified as warring factions seek to secure strategic locations, as pressure grows from international powers to end hostilities and allow humanitarian assistance to reach millions of desperate civilians. Fierce battles on Friday between the Sudanese army and its paramilitary opponents, the Rapid Support Forces, reminded residents in Khartoum, the capital, of the fierce combat that marked the first days of the war almost 3 weeks ago. The clashes were particularly intense around the presidential palace at the center of Khartoum, whose possession grants its occupants an appearance of legitimacy as rulers of Sudan. The sprawling complex is now badly damaged and is held by the RSF. The continuing failure of combatants in Khartoum and elsewhere across Sudan to respect successive ceasefires prompted the U.S. President Joe Biden on Thursday to threaten new sanctions against those responsible for, quote, threatening the peace, security, and stability of Sudan, undermining Sudan's democratic transition, using violence against civilians, or committing serious human rights abuses. The violence taking place in Sudan is a tragedy, and it is a betrayal of the Sudanese people's clear demand for civilian government and a transition to democracy, and it must end, Biden said. So, to interject, I guess, does that mean that we're going to sanction everyone? Because based on what I've been seeing as I followed this, that should essentially be the case if you're going to start threatening the sanctions. More than 550 people have been killed, according to Ministry of Health statistics, but the true total is likely much higher, as many deaths go unaccounted. The fighting has pitted forces loyal to General Abdel Fattah al-Burhan, the de facto military leader of Sudan, against those of the RSF commander, General Mohammed Hamdan Daglo. Both men now appear convinced they can win the current conflict and so gain unchallenged control over Sudan's crumbling state and resources. So the fighting in Sudan continues, and essentially, because if you tuned into the broadcast last week, I was talking about how most of the intense fighting had been ongoing in the capital city, Khartoum, and neighboring city, Omdurman, and I was mentioning that it seemed as though the RSF was continuing to gain territory, despite claim after claim from the Sudanese government that the government is regaining all their territory and that order will soon be restored. Now, this was an update that came through from people actually in Khartoum, and it's interesting that the internet, it goes in and out, and, the resources are very limited, but of course, if there is an area of Sudan that might still have some level of connectivity, it might be certain parts of Khartoum. And there was a map that was displayed, one of which I had been consulting, and the question was asked, is the map accurate? And mind you, this is being posed to people verifiably in Khartoum that are actually there on the ground right now. And the map in question shows the situation roughly with the RSF controlling a good probably 60% of the city, maybe 65% of the city, and the Sudanese government controlling about 35% of the city. And they were asked, well, do you think that this map, based on what you're seeing with your own eyes, is accurate? And you know what the people there actually said? They said, no, that map is not accurate, because what we're seeing on the ground is that the RSF controls way more of the city than just the 65% that was expressed in the map. Some people actually described the area, they quote, infested with RSF. And this individual said, I know we all wish that the Sudanese armed forces did control most of the city, as they claim, but we need to wake up. The RSF are in control here. And based on what those actual accounts had to say, it seems to line up with what I'm seeing, where you have these claims that get made online by the Sudanese army, saying, we're sweeping through here, we're doing this, we're doing that, etc., when in reality, are these claims being backed up with anything? No. Now, the RSF makes plenty of claims as well, but some of those claims are actually backed up with verifiable video that can be traced to certain locations within the city. People on the ground, and these aren't the first times I've been seeing this, are saying, yes, the Sudanese government is essentially making things up, and the RSF still controls more of the city. I think the big question is, will the RSF forces, being that they're paramilitary, be able to hold on to all the territory that they control? That's the big question. Are they going to run out of supplies and then retreat? Or are supplies going to be sent to them and they'll be able to maintain their lines? So that's what the big question in a lot of people's minds are at this point. But that's just an update again on the situation in Sudan. Now on to a few other stories real quick. The economy. Boy, this is a fun one. You know, there was one headline that I saw, and I'm not really going to focus on this, but I don't know. I don't like this. I just don't have a good feeling about it, but I don't know. The Treasury Department on Wednesday said it would repurchase U.S. government debt next year for the first time in decades in an effort to boost liquidity. So the Treasury is going to buy back the government's debt, and then people ask the question, with what money? With what money? There's not enough. That's just something that was thrown out there, so I don't really have enough details to really say anything more than that, but certainly when I saw that, that's a thought that came to my mind anyway. I just don't like it, but who knows. This is confirmed, though. The rout in regional banks picked up steam again Thursday morning, with several stocks suffering sizable losses. PacWest sank 50.6% and was halted for volatility multiple times. The slide began on Wednesday evening, following news that the Los Angeles-based bank was exploring strategic options, including a potential sale. The bank said in a statement it will, quote, continue to evaluate all options to maximize shareholder value. PacWest's strategic review was first reported by Bloomberg News and later confirmed by CNBC. Meanwhile, Tennessee-based First Horizon fell 33% after the regional lender and TD Bank announced that they were terminating their merger agreement. The banks said in a press release that the move was due to uncertainty around when TD would receive regulatory approval for the deal and was not related to First Horizon. Other notable declines included a drop of 38% for Western Alliance and 12% for Zions Bancorp. The SDPR S&P Regional Banking ETF was down more than 5%. Western Alliance's slide came despite an update from the company on Wednesday evening that showed deposits had grown since the end of March. That hasn't taken the heat off the stock or the bond prices. Investors are very nervous, and I think what they're nervous about is the fact that Silicon Valley lost 75% of their deposits in 36 hours. There's not a bank in the world that could really sustain that. KBW CEO Tom McCord said on CNBC's Squawk on the Street. Thursday's moves come less than a week after First Republic was seized by regulators and sold at a discount to J.P. Morgan Chase, marking the third failure of a regional bank since the start of March. J.P. Morgan CEO Jamie Dimon and Federal Reserve Chair Jerome Powell expressed optimism this week that the initial wave of bank failures has passed, but the drops for the stocks show that investors lack confidence. Tom McCord said that federal officials might need to change rules around deposit insurance, at least temporarily, to restore confidence in the banking system. This turmoil is still rolling, and I don't think it will stop until we build some stability into the system. So we'll see what happens there, but obviously a very intense turbidity at a minimum as far as the banking system goes. Over in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, an embattled George Soros bankrolled prosecutor in St. Louis resigned Thursday amid a legal effort by Missouri's Attorney General to fire her for neglecting her duties. St. Louis Circuit Attorney Kimberly Gardner, the city's top prosecutor, is stepping down following repeated bipartisan calls for her resignation from officials across the state. Gardner's office tweeted her resignation letter, which was addressed to the people of St. Louis. Gardner is one of the first progressive prosecutors whom Soros, a liberal billionaire and Democrat mega-donor, bankrolled in 2016 and again in 2020. She announced last month that she would seek a third term. Her resignation is effective June 1st. For years, Gardner's office has faced criticism for mishandling cases and office dysfunction. The final straw for the Missouri Attorney General Andrew Bailey to take action came in February when a teenage volleyball player visiting St. Louis with her team was struck by a car and lost both her legs. A man was charged in the crash with assault, armed criminal action, and operating a motor vehicle without a valid license. He was out on bond, awaiting trial for a separate armed robbery case, despite violating the terms of his bond several dozen times. Gardner argued that her office had tried to put the suspect back in jail, but that a judge had denied their request, so the prosecutor's office is putting the blame on a judge. However, there are no court records of her office, which is responsible for monitoring compliance with bond conditions and revoking them when the terms are violated, asking for his bond to be revoked. The Missouri Attorney General claims that nearly 12,000 criminal cases have been dismissed by what he calls Gardner's failures, and says more than 9,000 cases had been thrown out as they had been about to go to trial, forcing judges to dismiss more than 2,000 cases due to what Bailey described as a failure to provide defendants with evidence and speedy trials. Despite Gardner's resignation, Bailey was unsatisfied, releasing a statement calling on her to leave office immediately rather than wait to the end of the month. There is absolutely no reason for the circuit attorney to remain in office until June 1st, he said. We remain undeterred with our legal quest to forcibly remove her from office. Every day she remains puts the city of St. Louis in more danger. How many victims will there be between now and June 1st? How many defendants will have their constitutional rights violated? How many cases will continue to go unprosecuted? Well said, in my opinion. St. Louis, Missouri, interjecting now, has a crime problem. It has for a while. My view of this stuff is simple. It's the job of a prosecutor to be tough on crime. Fair, but tough. And you can be both of those things simultaneously. It's called doing your job. The level of mismanagement that you see in that office, along with many others, the dereliction of duty, the fact that crime there is not getting any better. These offices will try to tell you that this is progress, but if you ask anyone living in St. Louis, Missouri, I doubt they'll call it the same thing. The way I look at it is simple. If a bad person does a bad thing, then accountability needs to be taken for their actions. And I believe that actions have consequences, especially when you're talking about ending lives, changing them irrevocably, etc. So when you're talking about thousands and thousands of cases here that are just getting thrown out, people who have probably been through hell aren't getting any justice, horrible people are being put right back on the streets who are probably going to reoffend, hurt more people, possibly kill more people. You have this poor volleyball player that gets run over, loses both her legs. Imagine that. From this guy who shouldn't have even been on the streets in the first place, and then the prosecutor's office has the gall to lie about it. No, out with them. It's as easy as that, in my opinion. Tough, but fair. That's not impossible. That's just my opinion, but I don't know. Maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm in another reality, but I think that it's possible to be both of those things. I think that you could be a hardline prosecutor and make sure that you're prosecuting the right people. Who would have thought that such a thing is actually possible? I think so, anyway. And I think that cities like St. Louis, Missouri desperately need that, and many more cities for that matter. But good on the Attorney General there. I think he did the right thing. That's the latest news from VORW, Radio International. Now, for the remainder of the broadcast, I'd like to balance out this talk and discussion with some listener-requested music. If you're tuned into this broadcast right now, first and foremost, please note that I have no analytics for this transmission. That means I have no statistics, no metrics, no way of knowing that there is anyone out there listening into this broadcast. Whether you're tuned in online, on your phone, on your shortwave radio, on AM radio, however it is you're listening, I haven't a single clue. It would be great to know that there's at least someone, somewhere out there tuned into this broadcast, and I didn't just kill half an hour talking to myself. It'd be great to know that this broadcast, again, is reaching anyone, anywhere. Only way I know that anyone's out there listening is if you write in, say hello, let me know that you're tuned into this broadcast. You could just send in a short email, say, hi, I'm listening in. You could send in a reception report. You could let me know maybe the frequency you're tuned in on, how the reception is on your end. If you'd like, and of course you are under no obligation to do any of this, maybe let me know whereabouts in the country or in the world you're receiving the broadcast from. Likewise, I've been talking about listener-requested music. Way to send in a request is very simple. I'm very lenient when it comes down to the music played, any title, any artist, any genre, any era. Pick a song, any song, and then I, to the best of my ability, will try to get it played for you. All you have to do is send in the title and artist you would like to hear in this broadcast. Send it to me via email. I'll add it to the queue and then try to get it played for you right here. All right, of course, way to write in via email, following email address: VORWINFO@gmail.com. Again, that's VORWINFO@gmail.com. Once more, third time's a charm. VORWINFO@gmail.com. Maybe write in while the next song is playing. The choice is yours. Into the requests. Eric in Pine Hill, North Carolina, would like to hear Summer Breeze by Seals and Crofts.